So what is up, guys? Nick here, helping you to master your technology. Should you buy the iPhone 14 Pro Max or the iPhone 14 Plus? Which one is for you? Well, I bought both of them, so you don't have to make that decision for yourself. You could just watch this video, and by the end of this video, you'll know by just what you resonate with more, what I say in this video, which one is more for you. Now, talking about the price point right away, if you're looking for the better price point, the iPhone 14 Plus has the lower price point at $899 for 128 gig. However, many are arguing that at that price point, that phone is not worth it because it doesn't have a 120 hertz display. The iPhone 14 Pro Max starts at $1099 and goes up from there. So every storage tier you go up in the iPhone 14 Plus, it will be cheaper than the iPhone 14 Pro Max, but you are sacrificing one extra lens and the 120 hertz display. That's about what the main gist of the sacrifices are. Now with the iPhone 14 Pro Max, with paying more, you do get the more premium back that doesn't show smudges, but the edges do show smudges. And if you do want the phone that has a little bit more pop to the color, the red and maybe the blue of this year have pretty nice colors, and even the purple shows pretty well. So, I mean, if you want a color that's just a little bit more letting people know your style, you might like these phones right here. I just think the pros are a little bit more dull. I mean, we do have the purple, the deep purple that came out this year, but even that in certain lights doesn't really stand out all that much. They're a little bit more down, like the tones are a little bit lower than the tones on the regular models. So that's pretty much what I think about price and colors and stuff like that. Now, when talking about the build of both phones, just really both of them do give you a premium feel, but if you want the more luxurious feel, pick the iPhone 14 Pro Max. That stainless steel edge and just the overall weight of it just gives it a heft, a premium feel to it. But if you like a cleaner edge on the iPhone 14 Plus, you'll definitely prefer this phone. I think the iPhone 14 Plus has the more simpler look. It's still premium, but it's not as luxe as this phone. It doesn't stand out as the top of the line like this one does right here, but it's still a really premium phone, and it feels much lighter than the iPhone 14 Pro Max. So if you're looking for the lighter weight everyday carry, the 14 Plus would be the pick for me. Now, when it comes to having just the build just feel like, oh man, I just bought the highest end phone on the market, it's probably going to be this one right here. And while it doesn't feel too much different from iPhone 12 Pro Max and 13 Pro Max, those phones were already some of the most premium feeling phones out there. They are about the same size and shape though, but them camera bumps on the iPhone 14 Pro Max definitely stick off the body a little bit more, a little bit thicker camera hump on there on the iPhone 14 Pro Max. But overall, it's kind of like simple, clean design versus luxurious, premium, ultra premium design on the iPhone 14 Pro Max. Also, keep in mind, there's one extra thing that really stands out for the iPhone 14 Pro Max, and that's the dynamic island. Obviously, if somebody sees your dynamic island, they're gonna know you have the absolute latest iPhone right there with that new pill cutout up there. With this one, they're not gonna know if you have last year's model or maybe even the iPhone 12 from a distance. It might look the same. Also, this space black is a newer color. They haven't made that before, whereas they've made red iPhones before. So the space black will let them know. Also, the purple will let them know as well. So the iPhone 14 Pro Max, what I'm saying, has more flex. It has more, I got the newest phone, bro. So if you feel like that's something you want, then essentially this is going to be the one for you. While you can still brag that you have the 14 model, if you buy this one, people are going to say, hold on, let me see that. Is that really a 14? Because it still looks like the 13, honestly. And maybe even the 12 to some people who aren't aware of the diagonal camera difference. So yeah, I just got to say, if you want to say I got the latest and greatest, a lot of people will believe you more when they see the 14 Pro Max or the deep purple 14 Pro, for example. So when it comes to the displays, if you're deciding which one to pick, I would honestly pick it on this. If you really want the smooth look, that's it. Nothing else. I mean, honestly, yes, the iPhone 14 Pro Max does get brighter. It does look a little bit brighter when you put them side by side. But the iPhone 14 Plus is also bright. So the average person would probably not even care that much because honestly at home, the iPhone 14 Pro Max gets so bright you don't really want it that high. And then when you're out, the iPhone 14 Plus kicks up to like 1200 nits, so it's not that hard to see outdoors either. Although it's pretty obvious that it's easier to see the 14 Pro Max outdoors. This is just not the main reason, I would say. The real main reason is that 120 hertz. So if you cannot live with a 60 hertz anymore, like it's the end of the world, then go ahead and get yourself the 14 Pro Max. You're gonna be happy. Also, if you like the way the dynamic island looks, it's a different look versus the notch, then you'll definitely want to get this phone. And if you like interacting with stuff like that, personally, it hasn't been a big deal to me, but it's a cool thing to say that's the new feature. That's basically what I felt about it. The interactions are useful, but they're not much different than what you can do up here in Control Center. Like you can manage things up there as well. But overall, that's about it. There's nothing else to say. They're both similar resolutions. There's a little bit more pixels on the 14 Pro Max, making it 460 ppi versus 458 pixels per inch, but that's not even visible. You can't even really tell. They're both same size, both OLED displays, and both have about the same color accuracy. Apple doesn't oversaturate their panels. They're pretty nice and colorful, but not overly colorful like you would find on a Samsung phone, for example. So the differences in the software is really down to one thing, and that is the camera settings. So if you're looking to do ProRAW, you have that in the iPhone 14 Plus here in formats. Over here in the iPhone or the 14 Pro Max, over here in the iPhone 14 Plus, you're not gonna find that. It's just gonna say high efficiency and most compatible. So quite a few more features here on the iPhone 14 Pro Max in that area. In addition, when you do go to the actual camera software, you do have that macro mode. That's also different, macro video mode. And you do have multiple lenses for zooming. So that's a big deal too. But we'll talk more about that in the camera section. Those are about the differences you're gonna see. Other than that, they're gonna have the same application support, the same app libraries, the same navigation. Again, navigation's a little different with Dynamic Island with a certain few features, but that's only if you choose to use it. They both do have the same control center as well as the same widget support. So both these phones can basically do the same exact things and are gonna provide you with the same software support over the next 5 years. So I wouldn't really pick either just on the basis of software. Pick it on the basis of Dynamic Island if you care a lot about different interactions with that software. So when it comes to performance, I'm gonna tell you right now, I messed up the camera. I'm gonna tell you right now, the iPhone 14 Pro Max, it doesn't really feel faster at all than the iPhone 14 Plus. It only feels smoother. So I used both of these, analyzed both of them, and both of them fly through everything. I mean, there's literally no difference besides the 120 hertz. Yes, we do have an A16 CPU. It's technically better, but they both have 6 gigs of RAM, and they improved the thermal design of the A15 on the iPhone 14 Plus. So the way they designed it is a little bit more efficient than last year. So it's just slightly better than last year, but also not too far behind the iPhone 14 Pro Max with this A16, which feels more like an A15 Plus chip. It doesn't feel like a groundbreaking upgrade on the chip department. Yes, if we do a benchmark, we're going to get better scores. We'll do a separate speed test. But other than the smoothness, I don't really feel anything else in performance. They're both incredibly fast. So when discussing the differences in camera, it really comes down to some of those things I talked about in the software section. It's down to the difference in the zoom. Like you can go 3x, you can also go up to 15x digitally if you want. Also, you can go ultra wide on both of them. But here's the thing about the iPhone 14 Plus that I like. Even though this phone doesn't have, the zooming, it has a really strong quality main camera. It's even though it's not 48 megapixels, it has great quality, and those JPEGs are more the size that fit on phones properly. I don't know a lot of people are actually going to use a 48 megapixel and blow up the image. Yes, there's a niche crowd of people who are professionals. They need that stuff, and I'm glad Apple makes this option for them. But most people probably are not going to be taking 48 megapixels because they don't want to mess up the storage or, just have so much storage being taken up. So unless you're actually a pro or actually going to be doing things like that, these camera experiences are pretty similar with a big difference, and that is macro mode and zoom. So those are the real deciding factors, I feel like, between these two. Do you need the macro photography? Do you need the zoom? If you do, get the iPhone 14 Pro Max. Also, one thing that's neat is that both of these did improve on the front-facing cameras drastically. Specifically, the cinematic modes can go now in 4K 30. That means that you can get some really nice vlogging videos that look really sharp, and they do a better job with not having like weird lines around the head and things like that. So it looks incredibly, the depth of field looks just really good. Also, these phones here do record similar level of video, 4K 60, and they can both do the action modes. So really it's those niche little camera features like the raw mode, the macro mode, and the zoom mode rounding out the 14 Pro Max. It's the better pick if you want the all-around best camera. But the iPhone 14 Plus, I think, has all the camera stuff the average consumer needs, the person who just is going to use an iPhone for snapping videos and photos for social media. The iPhone 14 Plus can give you some amazing results. Just take a look at some of these front-facing video cinematics that come out of these phones. It's kind of what the 4K 24 cinematic video does look like. You can see behind me a little bit of blur action. Overall, the focus kind of stays on my face, and as you bring it in, you can see it still focuses on me because it has autofocus now on that front-facing camera. So not bad overall. And I'll take a look at some of these photos. So you can see photo after photo, they're both producing incredible results. So you can't go wrong either way. You just have to pick. Do I need the zoom and do I need the macro? That's really the big deal here. And if you're a professional, you're probably not even watching this video. You already bought an iPhone 14 Pro Max. And of course, one of the most important areas of these two phones is battery life. And here is where the iPhone 14 Plus makes up for its shortcomings, because the battery life is absolutely smoking my iPhone 14 Pro Max. And you can watch all the speed or the battery tests that you want. Those are not real. And I'm telling you right now, in reality, I'm finding myself to get maybe 1 hour to 2 hour better on the 14 Plus. This one, I'm not constantly hitting the charger. It's an all-day phone. But the iPhone 14 Plus, this may be even an all-day and a half phone. But this phone is kind of like the 13 Pro Max when it first came out. Very good 2-day battery life, maybe 3 days if you're a really light user. So yeah, the iPhone 14 Pro Max definitely losing out to the Plus and battery life. We're talking 1 to 2 hours difference in screen time in my experience. So both of these do have improved signal strength, improved Qualcomm X65 modems. They have really good call quality and really good speaker performance. They're both very loud and rich in their audio, so we don't have any issues here. And these phones also both have eSIM, so you're looking for some support for physical SIM cards. It's just not happening on these two phones. You have to go the digital SIM route. I will say, in conclusion, the iPhone 14 Plus and 14 Pro Max are both really good phones, but the iPhone 14 Pro Max is a great phone. It has the faster refresh. It's on the bleeding edge of the tech. It does have the extra cameras, the more premium feel. But the iPhone 14 Plus, probably a little bit overpriced right now. I mean, if you can get a trade-in deal, get it a little bit cheaper. It'd probably be a pretty good deal. Like if you trade an old iPhone, get like $300-400 off the price tag of that, it'd probably be decent. But there's an argument that is pretty valid about people saying you only got to spend $100 or $200 more and you get all this boss tech. And yeah, that's true, but $100 or $200 more could be the difference between somebody's electric and gas bill. You know, and if they don't need this stuff, that's more important. I'm just saying, you got to put in perspective that it's not just about the people that love tech got to get the latest and greatest. Some people don't even need that stuff, honestly. They just want a new phone and they want it from the carrier, from Apple. That's it. They're just going to get the 14 Plus, even though there's something superior there. So I'm clearly not saying it's better. The iPhone 14 Pro Max is obviously the superior phone. But I think Apple will still sell quite a few of these Pluses, but I would like to see Apple make this a little bit more smooth next year with maybe 90 hertz or 120 hertz. Anyway, which would you pick? Obviously, me being into tech, I would go with the iPhone 14 Pro Max, but I'm trying to be fair here to both parties that like both these phones. So thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Let me know which one you would pick. Subscribe if you haven't already. Nick here. Be sure to be well, and peace.